What's up, YouTube family? I'm here inside the mall in Frisco, and I'm going over a cut that I just did back in PC from a guy who said he just went to Great Clips and he wanted to get his haircut freshened up. So pretty much he got a haircut and he wanted to get a real haircut on top of it. So what we did was we cut him with skin fade and underneath the fade he had just gotten to make it look like a real haircut. So let me know what you think. Tell me down in the comments. Let me know what questions you have and what it looked like after we cleaned it up. All right, cool. Talk to you soon. So we're gonna jump right in, and the first thing we're gonna do is create an outline for his haircut. So we want to create an outline to sort of frame everything that we're gonna do moving forward. So you'll be able to see as I turn him what his haircut looks like. Just a basic cut. It was supposed to be a fade, but we're just edging in his C-cups with the corner of our trimmer, and then we're gonna do his edge up across the front so that we have a frame and we can see exactly where we're gonna place his fade. So working with straight hair, I'm gonna use a comb a little bit more than I would with the brush, just to make sure that those hairs don't fall differently than they would if they were combed. So he'll probably be using a comb more than he would a brush, because he's not like pulling any curls or anything out of the way. So as we start to tap in those vertical bars, what I'm doing right here is flipping the trimmer over just to use it kind of like a shear to knock off any of the little hairs that might be hanging over and aren't laying on his skin. So I'm flipping those over just so that it reveals the hairline, and everything that might be sticking or hanging over, we can just knock that off, get that out of the way before we get into the actual fun part of the haircut. So I'm really combing through these hairs just to make sure that they're not gonna fall down into the hairline. So I'm just triple checking that, so that once we clean everything up at the very end, again with our trimmers and our razor, everything will be pretty tight. It won't move around no matter what he does. And even right here, we're texturizing through the front just so that all those thick hairs aren't laying over his hairline. So crisp edge up, crisp hairline is the goal for this cut, even though he just got a haircut. And right here, if you see, we're going in with our ergos. They got a master blade on them, but they still open to a half. But I got the clipper about halfway open, maybe a tiny bit less than halfway open, to set this first bald line in, just because his hair is a little bit lighter and I don't want to have to take out a line later. So I don't really create really hard bald lines anymore. I use my clipper about halfway closed, a little bit more than halfway closed, to create my first bald line, and then just clean everything up afterwards. So we have not done anything different. We just flipped over the clipper. I have not moved the lever, but we still got it about a little bit less than halfway closed. And I'm just cleaning up all the hairs underneath here so we don't have a bunch of bulk going into our trimmer, and we can see everything. We're cleaning this up really nice. And then we'll close up the clipper first and then bald it out with the trimmer and start flicking out at the top. So we're saving time, making them look good and fewer steps. So we're starting off our first guideline with a 1.5 because we want to make sure that because of the color of his hair, which is a little bit lighter, even though it's pretty thick, it's pretty dense, so there's a lot of hairs per square inch of scalp. But I just want to make sure that we create enough room and give myself some extra space with this 1.5 instead of going in with a 1, because I don't want it to come out too light. Like, I can always go back and take off more hair, and I can always go up a tiny bit more with this 1.5 versus if I went in with a 1 and just made this way too light and raised his fade up higher than I wanted it. So the next thing we're doing right here is going in with our number 2 guard, and we're flicking out. We're flicking this into the fade because we're not cutting any more length off. We're just creating a fade under everything that was already knocked down to length for us. So we'll clean it up a little bit, but right now we're just blending that 1.5 into the length that was already on there. So it looked like it was a 2 all the way open per my clippers. It could have been different for theirs, but a 2 all the way open on my clippers is about matching the length of the hair on top. So if you see me flicking out a lot, it's because we're trying to contour this around his head. So there's some different bones in the head that can make a fade look darker in some spots. So we're just making sure that that's not the case as much as we can with the clipper before we go in and clean up everything behind it with our shears. So pay attention right here. We're gonna go in with our number 1, but it's gonna erase this line like a half guard would. So the 1/16 of an inch, we're going in with 1/8 of an inch, which is twice the length, and it's taking out this line. So if we would have gone in with this number 1, we would have raised his fade up too high for it to be a low, low mid drop fade. So glad we started off with a 1.5. And you see how we can always go back and take it up, but we can't put that hair back. So look how that number 1 is taking that line out. So now we got plenty of room to clean that up with the 1/16. And then we'll go behind that and clean everything up with our shaver and our trimmers, and we'll be good to go. Now that we got our 1/16 on, or our half guard, we're flicking this out and being very careful not to move this up. So I'm just flicking this edge with the corner of my clipper, sometimes the middle of the blade, but I'm just making sure that I'm not making contact with the rest of the fade when I do flick out. So flicking out, I mean like away from the scalp and just picking this line out. And you see how we're using the corner of this blade like an eraser through this curved part of the fade. So I typically try not to put the whole flat part of the clipper on a curved part of the fade, just because it doesn't seem to give you like the curve or the dimension of it, because it just gives you, it like puts you at risk to make a bald spot, or not even a bald spot, but a straight spot, and then you have to pick that out and then move it, and you have a weird curve. So you want to keep the curve even by using the corner of the blade. You can see we're doing the same thing on this side with the corner of the blade. So what we did right here was we hopped straight into some sideburn action. So we got the number 1 on, but I'm dropping this down into his sideburn and then taking the blade off, the guard off, to go ahead and clean up that space in between the ball line and the part of the sideburn that we just started fading into. So we're just working these steps down in the opposite order that we would have going up. So we got our one, and then in between, you know, on the low part, you'll see it on this side. Here you go. And that whole time on this sideburn, even once we pop this guard off, we're using the corner of the blade again, just to texturize through it and not take off too much hair in any spots that we don't really want to take the hair off. So we're taking our time, we're being patient with this fade, going down into his sideburn, and he's happy about it. He's looking pretty confident, and we're just knocking off the additional hairs on his hairline again. Just because we know that that's something that's going to be a focal point for him. He's super excited, and we're getting him cleaned up. This is a low fade, not a bald fade. As soon as I saw myself turn these clippers over, these trimmers, and start edging this ear out, I realized this is a low fade. I thought we were doing a bald fade, to be honest. If I would have turned the trimmers over and we would have just cleaned up this line, it would have been a bald fade. We would have cleaned it up and we would have went underneath with the shaver. But we're edging this thing up. So we're arching out his ear. We're arching out his ear right here and just giving him a really crisp edge up all the way around. I think that's what he was looking for. He wanted to get the most crisp look that he could. And the recommendation for that is a really low fade where you can still put an edge up all the way around it. So we're giving him as much structure as we can with these trimmers and going in and arching these ears out and being really aggressive with this edge up. So that's why we've been applying so much pressure to the front of this, making sure there's no hairs hanging over. And we're gonna keep going and keep applying pressure with these trimmers through this whole hairline. And we're gonna do the same thing with the back of his beard. These trimmers right here are pretty sharp, so I'm making sure that I'm not applying a lot of pressure on the back of his neck, and we're flipping them over as often as we can to clean up anything, because I do not want to drag these across the back of his neck. That'll really show up. This client is more fair skinned, and if I was applying a lot of pressure, you'd be able to see red lines and red marks on the back of his neck. So last thing you want to do is make a client look bad or like they made a bad decision by picking you as a barber. So we're about to switch trimmers. So these are the ones that do not have that black guard on them, the black ice guard. So these are ones that I use in more sensitive areas, like underneath the neck and whenever we're cleaning up things on a fade or balding something out. So these are a little bit more gentle. They do cut almost just as closely, but they don't grab the skin at all and they don't bite. So love them. They're very versatile depending on how you set these gold effects trimmers. So I haven't found anything that I really enjoy a lot more. I like the detailers to hit, but these, as far as cleaning up with no discomfort, they've been the best that I've used so far. So you can see me in the background loading up the brown OG Walker color enhancement spray, and we're gonna put this on really lightly. I got a darker brown just because I gotta spray it on lighter and use it, as needed. So I'm gonna put it really light brown OG Walker on here. His hair is brown-ish, but it also has a reddish undertone. So we're just gonna use this really lightly just to add a tiny bit of contrast for him. We think it'll look good, and we're gonna season it to taste and see what he thinks. But it was something he decided to keep. But as you can see, we didn't put it on very dark. This time we did not need a line of talc. We didn't need any Barber pencil. We didn't need to use hairspray to create a nice line for him, just because there wasn't a need for it to pop as much. So we wanted to keep him looking natural, but also give him a sharp edge up with a lot of dimension. But we didn't want it to look silly or, stand out too much. So we're trying to balance like tastefulness along with having a really sharp, clean haircut. So we're just following this up. We're following the enhancements up with the razor and just making sure that we get all of his lines knocked in, that there's nothing hanging over again. We'll probably clean these up at some point with a climber, with the trimmer or the shears at the very end of this, just to make sure. So that's what we're doing, making sure that he's good, making sure everything's gonna be extra crisp. So we'll pop him back up, and boom, just when you thought that we were done with everything, we need to actually make sure that his fade is blended well. So we gotta blend this together with our texturizing shears and make sure that we get all the dark spots out. I think it looked decent, but these are the things, these little things that will elevate your fades to the next level. So we want it to look professional, as professional as we can. So any dark spots that we do see, we're gonna make sure that we get those blended out. So you'll see us using this shear over comb method with our texturizing shears, and just making sure that we get any of these dark spots that you see to disappear and blend together. Don't forget to knock the hairs that you just cut off out of the fade, so you don't want them to lay there and you keep cutting thinking that it's not cut just because it looks a little bit darker. So knock them off after you cut them off, and you'll be able to see what's still left. I do my best to take these texturizing shears against the grain. So whichever way his hair is growing, I try and take them against the grain. But sometimes I work it into the direction of the fade. So it really depends, but normally against the grain gives me the best results. So the last thing we're gonna do is finish him up with some talcum powder and a talc neck duster, and give him the mirror, see what he thinks of his haircut, and send him on his way. Hopefully he likes it. Let's see what you think.